You wake up, maybe you're grabbing a coffee, checking your phone. But imagine waking up in, say, 30 AD. Not just the lack of Wi-Fi. Oh, believe me, that's the least of your worries. Imagine getting dressed, or more accurately, not getting dressed in the way you understand it. Because here's a little historical tidbit people rarely talk about. In ancient Judea, at the time Jesus was, doing his thing, women didn't wear underwear. Not a thong, not a brief, not even a simple loincloth, just nothing under their tunics. Let that sink in for a second, right there, underneath it all. Okay, so, right there, underneath it all. No underwear, just cloth against skin, maybe a loose, scratchy tunic. Think about the daily friction, the way fabric bunches, the dust constantly kicked up from dry Judean roads, clinging to everything, getting everywhere. Sweat, oh God, the sweat. Summers in that part of the world weren't exactly a gentle breeze and a spritz. We're talking baking, relentless heat, sometimes pushing 100 degrees Fahrenheit, even 110. Dry, yes, but still. You moved, you worked, you lived, and all of it just there. Open to the elements, to whatever microscopic life hitched a ride on the breeze. Now add to that picture the monthly reality, the absolute, undeniable, relentless fact of menstruation. For roughly a quarter of their lives, if they weren't pregnant or nursing, women bled. And without so much as a basic cotton panty, let alone a whisper-thin pad with wings or a sleek internal tampon. I know, it's gross. We don't like to think about it. We've sanitized history, put a filter over the grit and grime because our modern brains just can't. We package, we absorb, we forget. But those women, they couldn't. So, what did they do? What was the ancient equivalent of a trip to CVS? Well, there wasn't one. Some historians, bless their meticulous, slightly too interested hearts, suggest maybe they used wads of wool or folded linen rags. But let's be brutally honest. How much wool or linen could an average woman in a poor, rural society truly afford to just soak and throw away or laboriously wash again and again in scarcity of water? Not much, not consistently. For many, probably most, the answer was simpler, harsher. They bled onto their tunics, onto the ground, maybe onto a designated, often stained cloth they sat on. Can you even imagine the stench? The coppery, heavy smell of blood mixing with sweat and dust in the arid air, the feeling of it warm and wet trickling down their legs, the chafing, the constant gnawing worry about stains, about discomfort, about the sheer mess of it all. It wasn't a discreet whisper, it was a loud, unavoidable declaration every single month, a visual, olfactory announcement. And don't forget the social and religious layer slapped on top of that physical reality. We're talking about a culture where, according to Levitical law, a menstruating woman was considered unclean. 7 days. 7 days of being ritually impure. If she touched someone, they became unclean. If she sat on something, it became unclean. Everything she touched, everyone she interacted with. It wasn't just a biological event, it was a period of forced social isolation, an intimate terror compounded by communal rejection. It wasn't just, oops, I bled through my white jeans. It was, oops, I bled, and now I'm a pariah, and everything I touch is defiled. Think about that. Really think about that. Your body, betraying you, marking you, isolating you. Every month, for decades. And it wasn't just touching someone. The rules, the halakha, were meticulous, relentless. If she sat on a chair, the chair became unclean. If she slept in a bed, the bed became unclean. Anyone who then sat on that chair or slept in that bed, they also became unclean until evening, and they had to wash their clothes and themselves in fresh water. Imagine the logistical nightmare. In a society where water was often scarce, collected from wells or cisterns, used sparingly for everything from drinking to cooking to ritual ablutions, suddenly an entire household's daily rhythm could be thrown into chaos, into a constant cycle of purification rituals, all because of one woman's perfectly natural biological function.
It's easy for us, with our heated showers and unlimited tap water, to just shrug and say, "Oh, they just washed." No, they didn't just wash. They meticulously, ritually purified. And the resources for that weren't infinite. This wasn't just a personal inconvenience. It was an economic burden, a social blight. A woman's perceived impurity impacted the entire family unit, potentially even their ability to participate in communal religious life. Her very presence could defile. And while some scholars like to romanticize the idea of ritual purity as something beautiful, a way to connect with the divine, I look at the practicalities. I look at the raw, undeniable discomfort, the indignity, the constant nagging anxiety of being a walking biohazard, a source of potential defilement. You'd be perpetually on edge, hyper-aware of every movement, every possible stain, every interaction. Because one slip-up, one misplaced drop, one accidental brush, and you've just made someone else, or something else, tameh, ritually impure. Think about eating, food preparation, shared meals, the most fundamental aspects of daily life. How did a menstruating woman navigate these spaces? Did she eat alone? Did she prepare food that others would then eat? Some interpretations would have dictated she couldn't. This wasn't about personal hygiene. It was about spiritual contamination, a deeply ingrained belief system that turned a bodily function into a profound, often debilitating barrier. It's easy to dismiss this as ancient superstition, quaint and removed from our lives. But it shaped entire societies. It shaped family dynamics. It shaped how women saw themselves and how they were seen. For decades, a woman might spend a cumulative years of her life in this state of ritual exclusion. Years. Imagine the psychological toll, the internal shame, the constant low hum of feeling less than. Not just dirty, but unclean, in a way that resonated through every fiber of the culture. And what about those who bled constantly? Not just for 7 days, but for weeks, months, or even years due to some chronic gynecological issue. This wasn't just a theoretical problem. This was a devastating reality for some. The New Testament, the very source material of the Jesus's time we're discussing, gives us a stark, visceral example: the woman with the issue of blood. Mark chapter 5, verses 25 through 34, Matthew chapter 9, verses 20 to 22, Luke chapter 8, verses 43 through 48. She'd been suffering for 12 years of constant bleeding, not just bleeding, but constantly impure. Think about that. 12 years. Not 7 days a month, but every single day she was ritually unclean. Every single thing she touched, every person she interacted with became impure. She was a perpetual pariah, a walking, breathing symbol of defilement. The texts say she suffered a great deal under the care of many doctors and had spent all she had. All her money, all her resources gone, trying to find a cure for something that wasn't just a physical ailment. but a societal death sentence. She couldn't hold a job, couldn't marry, couldn't participate in community life. She was essentially a ghost, unseen, unheard, untouchable. Except that her very untouchness was a constant, damning declaration of her condition. Her story isn't just a miracle story. It's a window into the absolute, soul-crushing terror of being a woman with a chronic condition in 30 AD, especially one involving blood. This wasn't just about managing a period. It was about managing a life that was perpetually defined by its absence of purity. Her desperation, her sheer terror to even touch the hem of Jesus' cloak, quietly, furtively, hoping to go unnoticed, speaks volumes. Because if anyone found out, if she was identified, the mere act of reaching out would have, by law, defiled him. And yet she took that risk. That's how desperate she was for an end to the intimate terror that had consumed her entire adult life. We hear Levitical law and our eyes glaze over. We think of ancient texts, dusty scrolls. But these weren't abstract concepts. These were daily, lived realities. They dictated where you sat, who you spoke to, what you ate, how you bathed, how you existed. And for women particularly, these laws were woven into the very fabric of their most intimate, vulnerable experiences. It's a stark reminder, isn't it, of how utterly different our reality is. We complain about period cramps, about buying tampons, about changing pads in a public restroom. And don't get me wrong, those things can be annoying. But we have options. We have privacy. We have sanitation. We have a society that, for the most part, doesn't exile us for a natural bodily function. If you're finding this deep dive into the grittier, uncomfortable realities of history interesting, consider hitting that subscribe button. It helps us keep unearthing these forgotten, often inconvenient truths. Because history isn't just dates and kings, it's the visceral, messy lives of people who were just trying to get through the day with challenges we can barely even comprehend. The women of 30 AD didn't have the luxury of complaint. Not really. Their struggle was often silent, endured in the shadows of their homes or under the critical gaze of their community. The constant fear of staining, of revealing, of being outed as unclean must have been an ever-present hum beneath the surface of their daily lives. The sun beating down, the dust, the limited water, the heavy wool or linen tunics. Imagine the smell of it, clinging to their clothes, to their skin, a constant, unavoidable reminder of their perceived flaw. The chafing, the raw skin from constant moisture and friction. It wasn't just inconvenience, it was a physical ordeal, compounding the emotional and spiritual burden. And remember, contraception wasn't a thing, not in any reliable, widespread sense. So for many women, their lives were a relentless cycle of pregnancy, childbirth, nursing, and then the brief interlude of menstruation before the cycle began again. Each birth, each recovery, each monthly bleed, all without the modern comforts we take for granted. Every aspect of their reproductive health was exposed, unbuffered, unmanaged by anything resembling our modern medical understanding or products. It was raw, it was brutal, and it was undeniably terrifying in its intimacy. So what did they do? Seriously, what was the solution? People ask, always, as if there was some ancient secret tampon, some magic herb. There wasn't. There were rags, probably old, worn scraps of linen or wool, folded, tucked, if you had them, if your family wasn't so dirt poor that every scrap was for clothes. And then they got soaked, not absorbed like a modern pad, just wet. A damp, heavy wad of fabric between your legs, hot, sticky, for days.
I know it's disgusting. We barely want to think about it, but this is the reality, the constant, gnawing worry, because those rags, they shifted, they slipped. The blood, it leaked, it ran, down thighs, onto the precious outer tunic, the evidence, the stain, a dark, telltale blotch on the fabric, visible, undeniable, a scarlet letter, not for adultery, but for existing as a menstruating woman, in public, in a culture obsessed with ritual purity.
Think about it. You're walking to the market, sandals scraping on dry earth, the sun relentless, your stomach cramping, and then you feel it, that familiar, terrifying warmth, a gush. You freeze. You try to subtly check. Is it visible? Has anyone seen? The whispers, the stares, the immediate visceral recoil from anyone who notices. Because according to the law, anyone who touched that stained cloth, unclean. Anyone who touched you, unclean. The chair you sat on, unclean. The bed you slept in, unclean. For 7 days, or longer if the bleeding continued, it wasn't just you who was exiled. It was your world, your family, your husband. He couldn't sleep beside you, couldn't share a meal from the same dish, couldn't touch you, not without becoming unclean himself. And for him, that meant his own temporary exclusion from certain community rituals, his own inconvenience, all because of your impurity. Can you imagine the pressure, the guilt, the silent blame, the constant paralyzing fear of being discovered, of accidentally contaminating someone, of failing in your fundamental duty to be pure? It's a terror that's almost alien to us. A physical, social, spiritual quarantine every month, for decades, until menopause, if you even lived that long. Each bleed a forced, public, intimate accounting of your body's function, and there was no escaping it, no hiding, not really. The smell, the telltale sheen on worn fabric, the forced distance. This wasn't just discomfort. This was total, relentless, intimate exposure, a raw, unvarnished existence, every single month. You think about it, and it's horrifying, truly. We lose our minds over a minor inconvenience, a late delivery. They just endured. This wasn't some historical footnote. It was the rhythm of half a life, every single woman, every generation. It breeds a strange, grudging respect, doesn't it, for that quiet, relentless strength. And maybe, yeah, a little pang when you pick up your neatly wrapped tampons, your perfectly absorbent pads, makes you look at them, at your clean, dry pants, a little differently. Maybe even think, for a second, about the unseen battles fought daily just to exist. What do we complain about, really? If this made you squirm even half as much as it makes me, hit that like button. And tell me, what other unthinkable historical realities do we ignore?